Welcome back to my YouTube channel. I'm Xavier Smith, and today I'm going to go over all the tangent transformations individually. So let's start at the standard form. Our standard form of tangent is y equals a tangent b of x minus h plus k. Our a is our amplitude, which is the halfway point distance from the midline. Then our b determines our period. Our period is pi over b. Remember, because the base period of tangent is just pi, it is half of a circle and pi over b. So if our b is 2, then our graph is compressed by a factor of 2, and our period is pi over 2. If our b is 1/2, then our period would be 2 pi, and our graph would be extended, stretched out by a factor of 2 to 2 pi. H is our horizontal / phase shift. K is our vertical shift, which determines our midline. And then our scale has to go along with the period. We start at our vertical asymptote, which is pi over 2b, well, plus or minus pi over 2b plus h. And then we have our halfway point, then horizontal shift, then halfway point, then vertical asymptote. So let us start at amplitude and work our way through. First, amplitude. Let's go. We have our y equals tangent x. Then, if we say a equals 3 and a equals -2, let's start at a equals 3. Then we have y equals 3 tangent x. What does that do? Well, it extends the height of these halfway points from the midline. So the halfway points used to only go up to 1 and down to -1. Now they go up to 3 and down to -3. Now, if we say a equals -2, what this does is it flips the graph as well as multiplies the amplitude. Well, it multiplies the point distance from the midline. So instead of having pi over 4 comma 1, we now have pi over 4 comma -2. Because 1 times -2, if we say tangent of pi over 4 is 1, multiply that by -2, we get -2. So this point of 1 goes all the way down to -2. Then our point of -pi over 4, tangent -pi over 4 is -1. Multiply that by -2, and we get 2. So our graph flips, and we get -pi over 4, comma 2, and pi over 4, comma -2. That is not what I was looking for. Let's go to vertical shifts. Our vertical shift, again, just determines where our midline is. So we have y equals tangent x. And again, the midline is the x-axis at y equals 0. If we say b equals 1, then we have y equals tangent x plus 1. And every point on the graph is shifted up 1 in the y value. So now our middle point here is on 0, comma 1 instead of 0, comma 0. And then if we say b equals -2, we have y equals tangent x minus 2. And again, that minus 2 right at the end subtracts 2 from all the y values. So our midline is now y equals -2. And instead of 0, 0 as our middle point, we have 0, comma -2. And then all our points are shifted down, like 1, pi over 4, comma 1 is now pi over 4, comma -1. And then -pi over 4, comma -1 is now pi over 4, comma -3. Now we will talk about phase and horizontal shifts. We have our y equals tangent x. Remember, it starts, well, its middle point, the point in between both asymptotes, sits on 0. Then its halfway points are -pi over 4 and pi over 4, and its asymptotes are pi over 2 and -pi over 2. Let's start by making the h a -pi over 4. So then we have y equals tangent x plus pi over 4, because remember it's x minus h. So x minus -pi over 4 would be x plus pi over 4. So remember, when this is a positive, we are moving to the left. When it's a negative, we are moving to the right. So we have to shift every point in this equation, -pi over 4, to the left in the x values. So let's see. Instead of 0, 0, we have -pi over 4, comma 0. Instead of pi over 4, comma 1, we have 0, comma 1. And it just shifts everything over. Now the asymptote's not negative pi over 2, it's negative 3 pi over 4. And the asymptote's not just pi over 2, now it's pi over 4. We just shift every point pi over 4 to the left. Now, if we say h equals pi over 2, then we have y equals tangent of x minus pi over 2. So we shift every point pi over 2 to the right. So let's start. Instead of 0, 0, our midpoint, well, our middle value, our horizontal shift is our first point, is just pi over 2, comma 0. Then our pi over 4, comma 1 is now 3 pi over 4, comma 1. And our negative pi over 4 is now just pi over 4, comma negative 1. And our asymptotes, instead of negative pi over 2, that is now 0. And instead of pi over 2, it is now pi. And last but not least, period shifts. So period, y equals tangent x. Remember, the period of tangent is pi. So we have from negative pi over 2 to pi over 2 is pi, because pi over 2 minus negative pi over 2 will give you pi. So if we say b equals 1/2, then we have y equals tangent 1/2 of x. Remember, our period formula is pi divided by b. So pi divided by 1/2 is 2 pi. So our period is now 2 pi. We keep the point 0, 0, but instead of going to pi over 4, comma 1, we go over to pi over 2, comma 1. Because imagine plugging x into this equation. If we plugged in pi over 4 to this equation, pi over 4 times 1/2 would really give us pi over 8. And pi over 8 is not a thing we would graph. But if we plug in pi over 2, we are going to pi over 2 times 1/2 is pi over 4. So at pi over 2, we're really plugging in the tangent of pi over 4, and that tangent is 1. And then at negative pi over 2, it's negative 1. And our asymptote is now negative pi and pi, because remember, if you just plugged in pi, if you plugged in tangent of 1/2 of pi, you'd really get tangent of pi over 2, which was our original asymptote. And from negative pi to pi, our period is 2 pi. Now, if we say b equals 2, we have y equals tangent 2x. So our period is pi over b, which is now pi over 2. So everything is compressed by a factor of 2. Let's start. We have 0, 0, but instead of having pi over 2 as an asymptote, we have pi over 4 now. Because if you plug in pi over 2 to our function, you're going to get tangent 2 times pi over 2, which is really going to be 2 times pi. That tangent pi. But if you plug in pi over 4, you are going to get tangent pi over 2. Another way to do that is, remember, it is pi over 2b. It's h plus or minus pi over 2b. So if our b is 2, then we have no horizontal shift. So it's plus or minus pi over 2 times 2, which is plus or minus pi over 4. So we have pi over 4 and negative pi over 4. And then that means the point in between 0, or horizontal shift, and our asymptote is going to be negative 1 and 1. So we have pi over 8, comma 1, negative pi over 8, comma, negative 1. I hope that was helpful. Please leave a comment if you have any more questions. Tangent is very complicated, and I hope this helped. Thank you.